Let's work on some more advanced problems here. So when trying to find two numbers that multiply to another number, sometimes they can be positive and sometimes they can be negative. So let's take a look. All right, so here we have a problem, x squared minus 7x plus 6. All right, so again, we're trying to find two numbers that, that multiply to the 6, but they sum to negative 7. All right, so let's look at the pairs first that multiply 6, because like I said before, that's a much shorter list. So let's see, 1 and 6, 2 and 3, and then 3 and 2, but we already have that one, so this will be our list. 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Now, they have to sum to negative 7. So positive 1 and positive 6 make a positive 7. But a negative 1 and a negative 6 makes negative 7 here. All right, a negative times a negative is positive, and a positive times a positive is positive. So when we're trying to find two numbers that multiply to a positive number, but they sum to a negative, we're looking for two numbers that are both negative. So our pair here is negative 1 and negative 6. So again, I'm going to rewrite my middle term, my b term, into negative 1x minus 6x plus 6. Put this equal up front here. All right, and now we're going to factor by grouping. Here's the first group. Here's the second group. Now in the first case, what does x squared minus 1x have in common? Well, they at least have the number 1 and they both have an x in it. So I can factor out an x. Okay, again, what we should be thinking of about when thinking about what remains inside is x squared is being divided by what we're factoring out, which is an x. So it's x squared divided by x, which is just x. So I'll put that in right here. And then the second term, negative 1x divided by x, because that's what we're factoring out, is just negative 1. Good. And now let's look at the second pair. So what do negative 6x and positive 6 have in common? Well, they don't both have variables, so we're not going to factor in x, but they both have 6's. So we're going to factor out 6. Now, here's what's important. Because the leading number in this pair is negative right here, I'm also going to factor out a negative. So I'm factoring out a negative 6. Now what remains? Well, what is negative 6x divided by negative 6? Well, a negative 6 divided by a negative 6 is a positive x. And then in the second case, I'll switch back to blue, a positive 6 divided by a negative 6 is negative 1. Okay, so the reason why we're dividing by negative 6 is that for factoring to work, what remains in the second set of parentheses needs to match which was in the first. So in that case, we had a positive x come first and then a negative 1. So too in the second part, we need a positive x to go first and a negative 1. The only way that was going to work is by factoring out a negative 6. Okay, now we know then what our two factor pairs are. We have in the first case, let's see, here, and here. So in the first case, we have x minus 1. In the second case, we have x minus 6. Again, you can see that pair sitting right there. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about why we're seeing two x minus 1s out here and yet only one right here. So if you go to the next video, we'll talk about that.